Howdy everybody. Welcome back to the Willie St. Willie channel. I know it's been a while since my last, regular video. I believe it was the Scream Iceberg, the last thing I made. But yeah, actually, Scream 6 is actually really good, by the way. So I highly recommend you go check that out. It's probably the best one since Scream 2, if I'm being honest, at least in my humble opinion. By the way, I want to bring this up because I have no other way to really incorporate it, but I love the TurboTax ads they've been using on YouTube. I've been seeing them like every day, mostly because the tagline is, "Don't pay your taxes." So, aye, TurboTax. TurboTax based? Question mark? Hello, TurboTax. Yes, I would like to speak to the base department. Oh, I'm in hold. Sorry. But don't worry, everybody. Don't worry, because today I have something very special for you. It's a kind of a juicy story topic. It kind of relates to the cryptid iceberg. I really got to milk that for all I can. But yeah, I mentioned a couple stories that are kind of similar to this one, but this one's kind of on a league of its own. So, yeah. Talking specifically about alien abduction stories. Now, we have all heard the story like this, okay? You've seen it in movies, The Fourth Kind, Fire in the Sky, that kind of thing. But today I wanted to speak about one that was probably the weirdest one I've ever read in my entire life, and that would be the story of Antonio Villas-Boas. I think I'm pronouncing that right. I don't speak Portuguese, I'm sorry. I thought this was like some sort of science fiction erotic novel when I was reading it, but it's not. Now, do keep in mind, this story is pretty divisive, even amongst the UFO community themselves. And I'm not here to definitively say how authentic this story is. I mean, I'll touch upon the investigation portion of it, but if you want to be that guy that's like, well, actually, it's fake, then come on, man, we're trying to have fun, please. I'm trying to make a video, man, please. I'm just going to tell the story as Antonio says it happened and just let the events speak for themselves. I'll probably only throw in the occasional joke, maybe. And the story today takes place in Brazil, and as I mentioned before, I don't speak Portuguese, so I'm sorry if I butcher the pronunciations of the names and places, but I'm sorry, I'm trying my best, please. But first, a word from our sponsor, Raid Shet. No, I'm playing. I don't have a sponsor. Who the hell's going to sponsor this? Nobody. That too. So without further ado, let's get into it. Now, the handsome hunk of a man we're talking about today, Antonio Villas-Boas, was a Brazilian farmer born in 1934. His story is probably one of the more unique ones in the UFO community because of a certain activity that happens in the middle of it, but we'll get to that in a minute. Antonio claims that in 1957 he was abducted by extraterrestrials in his farm in Brazil. This story was one of the first widespread UFO stories. It even predated the big Betty and Barney Hill abduction story that's probably the most popular. So yeah, you're in for a treat with this one. Even though many skeptics claim that Antonio just made up the story for publicity or attention, he basically stuck to the story his entire life and never changed a detail of it. Never admitted he faked it or exaggerated a detail. He says every word of his story is true. So keep that in mind. On October 15th, 1957, young 23-year-old Antonio was plowing the fields near San Francisco de Sales, Brazil, when he claimed to see a bright red star in the night sky while he was plowing. As Antonio continued to work, the supposed bright red stars would get bigger and bigger, almost as if it was like going to collide into him. And he said there was a circular egg-shaped, like, aerial craft with a red light at the front of it that landed pretty close to him. And so, the pretty normal day in Brazil, if you ask me. Antonio said as the craft was landing, 3 landing legs came out from underneath it and landed pretty close to him. And obviously that would freak anybody out. So Antonio decided to run for his life. So yeah, Antonio tried to flee the scene and hopped on his big green tractor. And needless to say, this didn't last very long, as the tractor supposedly died right after he started using it, so he didn't get very far. And right after this happened, Antonio said a small humanoid creature that was around 5 feet tall jumped out in front of him and tried to grab him. So yeah, in the middle of Antonio wrestling to get away from this creature, 3 more similarly dressed creatures just jumped in and got him and were basically wrestling him to the ground and taking him to the spacecraft. Now, in my head, reading the story, I just imagined kind of like Oompa Loompas, like from Willy Wonka and the Chocolate Factory, kind of just coming out of the woodwork and just grabbing him. So yeah, pretty freaky stuff, to be honest. So yeah, once the Lollipop Guild managed to get Antonio into the spacecraft, they ripped his clothes off as any normal alien would, and they started covering him in this strange lube gel that was just all from head to toe, just covered him in it. So yeah, once Antonio was kind of buttered up like a biscuit, they kind of just took him to a semicircular room with weird red symbols and runes written on it. And later on, Antonio was able to recreate these symbols by writing them down for investigators. And once Antonio was in this room, they started taking blood samples from him. Like, they started sticking him in the neck and chin, like just drawing blood, which is a weird spot to get him from, I guess. But I'm sure the aliens aren't familiar with human anatomy, so I'll give him a pass, you know. And after they were done picking and prodding him, they left him alone for like half an hour in this room until another humanoid figure walked in the room. And this other humanoid that walked in the room was a little different than the other ones who jumped him. She was womanly like. I said she because he described her as a woman. She had long white platinum blonde hair, was like the same height as the other creatures that attacked him. Apparently had large blue cat-like eyes, so I'm imagining like big like anime eyes is kind of what I was imagining. And he described her, this is his own words, all right? This is how he described her, as very attractive. He was very attracted to this creature. And, oh yeah, he also added the detail of she had bright red, like downstairs hair, you know, pubes. She had bright red pubes. Oh yeah, I forgot to mention, before this lovely celestial lady walked in the room, they pumped the room full of this weird nauseous gas that apparently made Antonio really sick. So I guess that was, they were trying to set the mood, or it was like a pheromone. I guess that's what he was trying to imply. Yeah. Antonio also mentioned how he had this strange urge overcame him that he was just had to kith this interstellar woman. And then he proceeds to describe how they engaged in adult activities, you know, that things that mommy and daddy do. Coitus. They coitused each other. I'm just gonna say it. He had sex with an alien. Okay, Antonio had sex with an alien. Yeah, there's no other way to describe that. This man must have played Mass Effect and wanted to do that IRL. That's basically how the story read. It was in depth. The version I read was a little in depth than I needed to, but like I said, it wasn't that bad. It was the fact that he just threw it out there, just like, you know, here you go. This is what we did. Yeah, it was kind of weird. Like the detail he put into, like he even mentioned how that the alien lady didn't kiss him. Like she didn't want to kiss him. She just kind of like nipped at his neck, like try to bite his neck. I don't know. I guess the gas was some weird pheromone they pumped him with, man. But I don't know. This being me, okay, I would probably get stage fright. Okay, I just got kidnapped and put on an alien ship. I probably would not be able to get it up for the alien. You know what I mean? Like I'd be very embarrassed. You know, this would be a very bad mark for interstellar relations with the rest of the universe. But I'm sorry, man. Like maybe if they invited me politely onto the ship, I would have been more down. But anyway, yeah. Moving on. So yeah, Antonio, he finished inside of the cosmic lady, and then he describes how when he did, the alien woman proceeded to rub her belly like this, like was like rubbing her belly and like gestured upwards and like this, like pointed up, and he took that as they're going to raise their baby in space. Like, okay, I guess that's a pretty good assumption, I guess. Antonio, he also added how, like, this man must have just inferred a lot from these humanoids, but he says that the female seemed relieved that the task was over. Like she was just like, shoo, like, oh, glad that's over. like you're gross, glad that's over. Whew. I'm sorry. I don't laugh. Don't laugh. Just. So yeah, Antonio naturally felt a little violated by this, you know, as who wouldn't. He said they used him as a good stallion. So I guess Antonio is just like the biggest Chad. He's the zenith, the pinnacle of humanity for genetic material. He's the prime. He's the prime of what we have to offer. He's just the best. So, yeah, I don't know why he added that detail, but I thought it was interesting. So apparently after this close encounter, the humanoids took Antonio around the ship and just showed him around a little bit. He said he tried to steal a clock-like device. It just has proof that, this happened because, because who's going to believe you when you said, yeah, I hooked up with an alien? Like, who's going to believe that? And, but apparently the humanoid stopped him. They saw him doing it. So they were like, no, don't touch merchandise. And they just kicked him off. He got away, and then the ship took off. And when he got back home, he realized that 4 hours had passed. So this man has stamina of a god, I'm just saying. After some time had passed, Antonio described how he became very ill for a short period of time, describing how he had skin lesions, he had nausea, fatigue, headaches, and it's never really explained why, but it only leads him to believe one thing, that Antonio contracted a space STD. I mean, there's no other way to interpret that. I just wanted to add that little detail in there, because that's how I interpret it. I'm just kidding. They explain his illness. I want to make that joke, sorry. Antonio managed to contact journalist Jose Martins, who was looking for people who had experienced some sort of alien encounters or abductions, and lo and behold, Antonio found his ad in the newspaper, so he decided to reach out to him. Upon hearing Antonio's entire story, Jose decided to contact Olavo Fontes, who was a member of the National School of Medicine of Brazil, and upon examination, they found that he was suffering from radiation sickness, so that would explain all the lesions and headaches and everything he was having. And yeah, it basically was a mild form of radiation sickness, so that kind of explains it, but I prefer the space STD explanation. That's just me. I'm just going to read you the medical description and when Antonio was examined because it's kind of wordy. Among Boas's symptoms were pains throughout the body, nausea, headaches, loss of appetite, ceaselessly burning sensations in the eyes, cutaneous lesions, I hope I pronounced that right, at the slightest of light bruising, which went on appearing for months, looking like small reddish nodules, harder than the skin around them, and protuberant, painful when touched. Each with a small central orifice yielding a yellowish, thin, waterish discharge. The skin surrounding the wounds presented a hyperchromatic, violet-tinged area. So, yeah, gross. So despite all these wild events, Antonio's story didn't really come to light until around early February 1958. It didn't receive any sort of print material until 1962. Even after several interviews, Antonio was able to remember every detail of the encounter without any sort of need for hypnosis, like many sort of alien abductions, and his story kind of fell right into place among all of the famous alien encounter and abduction stories. Now, researcher Peter Rogerson had a few doubts over the authenticity of Antonio's encounter. He basically concluded that he copied elements from other people's abduction stories and encounter stories and just kind of included it into his own. I'll just read you the quote from himself describing it. One reason why the Boas story gained credibility was the prejudiced assumption that any farmer in the Brazilian interior had to be an illiterate peasant who couldn't make this up. As Eddie Bullard pointed out to me, the fact that the Vilas Boas family possessed a tractor put them well above the peasant class. We now know that Antonio was a determinedly upwardly mobile young man studying a correspondence course and eventually becoming a lawyer. So Peter does have a point. Antonio's family did have a leg up above most of the other peasant class farmers, and Antonio himself even became a lawyer later in life. So basically his conclusion is that the story is bourgeoisie propaganda. Yeah, this is still honestly my favorite alien abduction story just because of how wacky it is. Not that many come close to it, it's the sheer craziness of the premise. But I have heard some more credible stories, at least ones that are a little bit more believable. Like I said, I'm not here to make the determination if it's real or not. But yeah, this is probably my favorite because of how entertaining it is, but not necessarily because of its credibility. As entertaining as some of these alien encounter stories can be, I appreciate the more existential elements of just the premise of interstellar species and traveling and science fiction stories describing other civilizations, as it makes humanity just seem a little bit more smaller and kind of, I guess, humbles us in a way. But honestly, I believe that there are some sort of intelligent life out there somewhere in the universe, because it's just so endless and big that I have a hard time believing that there isn't. I'm not saying aliens have ever come to Earth at any point or anything like that. I'll leave that for you, the viewer, to decide. But thank you guys, as always, for tuning in and watching my videos and hearing me ramble about whatever stories I choose to talk about for that day. But I really do appreciate it. And I appreciate the reactions and support and comments. You guys, I love you all so much. You guys are the best. And if you guys happen to have your own alien encounter stories, feel free to leave them in the comments below. I might respond to them. Maybe if it's wacky and zany enough, I'll even talk about it in a future video. You never know. And I can do whatever. It's my channel. I can do whatever I want with it. So, In all seriousness, though, just to wrap this video up, thank you for the love and support. Your support means the world to me, and it's the reason I even make these videos to begin with. I kind of experiment just whatever videos I want to make. I might dive into more different content in the future, maybe, fictional stuff, political stuff, whatever you want me to do. Maybe I might stream in the future. You never know. I'll see how that goes. But thank you for watching. And just in case I don't see you, stay safe and have a good one. Goodbye.